All right, we are live on Facebook.
All right, cool. So, hello, good evening. I am Chelsea and this is Danny here. And today we're real happy to be talking to Frank Smith. So would you like to say hello to the world, Frank?
Hello, everybody.
So today's interview is about, it's part of a bigger project that we're doing with theater artists out of the Savoy at Curtis Park, and it's called Recipe. So we are going to be interviewing people who have lived a long time in Denver, the people who carry the history of Denver, and Frank here is one such person. And next year in 2021, theater artists will be taking information from these interviews and turning it into a performance art piece. So they will be doing derived theater, is what that style is called. And we're really excited to be a part of the project and working with theater artists on this.
Yeah, it's super exciting, super grateful that you joined with us today, Frank. Yeah, and
I was listening to Chelsea, what she was saying. Now, this theater's project, you say they are located in Curtis Park?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that happened to be one of the borderlines of the Black neighborhood back in the beginning.
Uh-huh.
So where exactly are they located?
Oh, are they on 28th or 30th?
28th in Curtis?
I can't remember. They're
28th in California.
Let me double check right now.
Well, don't worry about it.
Yeah, but just right around in that neighborhood. And they actually have been very interested in doing theater around that neighborhood based on the history. So last year, in the beginning of 2020, they did a performance piece about the history of Five Points, based on some stories that they had heard back then. So this is going to be their second derived piece based on the local community, which is super cool.
And
so now, are they actually in the what we used to call the projects, which
they're
are homes and stuff now?
So they're by the old water company.
Okay.
At Savoy or at Arapahoe and 27th.
Okay. Well, if you want me to start off, then I can start telling you.
Well, why don't we start off with, can you just tell us what is your birth date, what year you were born? And what were your
real one or the one that I tell everybody, or?
The real one, please.
The real one. Okay. I was born in 1940. Born here in Denver. At the time, there was only two hospitals that we could go to. And that was Denver General, and I think it was called Colorado General at the time. Those were the only two hospitals that we could go to at the time. So a lot of choices there. And some of the hospitals were bordered the Black neighborhood then, but you couldn't go to them. But they had two of the hospitals that, well, like I told you, the hospitals, and that's what I have a problem with. I have long-term memory, which is one of my superpowers. Or short-term memory, I go to set the books down and I'll fall over them in 10 minutes. So.
Oh, well. We all have
I turn the light on in there so you can downstairs, so you can see. Okay.
And what were your parents' names, Frank?
My father's name was Frank. I'm not a junior, though. I'm supposed to be. But they didn't get the license. They didn't get it on to the birth certificate right. So my name is Frank L. Smith. My father's name was Frank Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother was Maddie. She was originally from Texas. He's originally from Mississippi. He got to Denver by way of the railroad as he was a member of one of the first protest groups, which was the sleeping car porters and waiters, which was a national organization. You heard of it?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't expect you to, but and my mother, I don't know how she got it. I never thought of that. That's interesting. But this is my daughter, Shiree.
Hi.
Shiree.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, not a problem. How are you guys?
Doing good.
Doing good.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell them how old you are, and
I'm old.
so that they'll know where we're starting here.
I am 46 years old. I just turned that a week and a half ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
So you can kind of get a perspective of what she knows. She's
Mhm.
half my age, really and truthfully.
Yeah.
But
Would you be able to turn the camera a little bit?
sure. Well, we're hearing the voice there. There you go.
All right, perfect. Now we have both of you in there.
Yeah, that works.
So we were just kind of getting started talking about Frank being born here in Denver, Colorado.
Mhm.
And Frank, what was your early childhood like?
In our block, everything back then was about the neighborhood. I mentioned to you about the burning crosses up on Castle Rock, but we didn't have to go out of the neighborhood for much of anything. The doctors came into the neighborhood. They made house calls back then. And everything that you wanted, people came to your door to give it to you. The Watkins man, the Fuller Brush man. They had ice boxes. So when you hear the word ice boxes, were real ice boxes, which was just a box lined with metal, and you kept ice in the top. That's how you kept the whole thing cold. So you had Iceman that brought ice around to your house once or twice a week. You had a guy that come
So
around.
is that like the version of a refrigerator?
That's what you call a refrigerator.
Okay.
That was the first refrigerator. You hear a lot of black people still say icebox.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you've heard that before. That was a real icebox back then. You used to have ice pick, and you chipped off the ice to get what you wanted for your drinks. So you got one big piece of ice and be floating in there, and that was heaven. Never didn't want the little fine pieces. But everybody came in that you needed. So you learned at a very young age to tell them that my mama said, "I'm not this, she's not here." So she behind the door, and they would say, "Well, just tell her that I'll be back next week. Don't worry about it. But you can get everything on credit." So there was not anything that you couldn't buy just sitting in your front room. Different salesmen would come by to sell it to you. And in the block, every block or every other block had some type of a store.
Now, whereabouts in Denver were you living at the time?
On 27th and Lafayette.
Oh, okay.
So that's, you know where that is?
Yeah. And so then that was a black neighborhood.
It was integrated at that time in the 1940, 41, where I can start remembering. It was in an integrated neighborhood then.
Mm-hmm.
So She got a dog that wants to be in the meeting.
Oh, nice.
But there would be like, this neighborhood had just started to be integrated at that time. And in a block, there would be still 4 or 5 white families still living there. Usually by that time, most of their kids had gone off. The house next door to us, Buffalo Bill used to live in.
Buffalo Bill.
Oh, wow.
And he had owned that house, and then he bought another house down in the next block on the corner, and that's where he lived till he got sick and died or whatever it was.
Now, when was Buffalo Bill around? He was like in the 1800s, right?
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. He owned the house next door to us.
Wow. And
Oh my God.
what was he doing in the house? Did he have a job up there?
That was his home. Yeah, that was his home.
Wow.
So, I mean, you're not talking about, he was doing shows and stuff right up to 1930 something.
Oh my God. So right before you were born, 10 years before or so.
That's not very much. I mean,
Yeah.
matter of fact, the house that was next door, that's where he lived, had a metal hitching post that they left out in the front yard.
Oh, that's cool.
Right up till, I got pictures of cars, with the hitching post sitting there next to the cars. But you gotta think about the people were just beginning to buy cars and stuff. Then the war hadn't started yet. I can remember back to those days. Television still was 10 years away. And
was the freeway there?
huh?
I guess the freeway wasn't there yet, huh?
No, they had a highway through there.
Mm-hmm.
Colfax was the main highway coming through the town.
And
that's the dividing point.
What was the reputation of Colfax at the time?
Oh, it was very reputable. That's where all the business was and stuff back then.
Mm.
Everybody drove up and down Colfax because that's where all the big businesses were.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't nothing, they used to say, like the area you're asking about, if it doesn't happen on Colfax, it doesn't happen in Denver.
So, expression.
Yeah, so this was a neighborhood where still in our neighborhood, there was American Furniture started off in a couple of blocks over in a building. So you can kind of get an idea. It was very integrated neighborhoods right downtown. Then the white families that were there were mostly their kids had grown up there and they had left and their mothers and stuff were still there. And these were young Black families that were moving in with kids. So there would be, these houses are all brick, 2 stories, mostly. Some of them in every block there was what we would call castles. There'd be 3 stories, 4 stories. They're selling for $1.5 million down there now.
Wow.
So yeah, you can't get into the neighborhood under 500. So.
Mm-hmm. And so, when you were a kid growing up, what were some of the things that your parents taught you? What were the things that were really important that they wanted you to know?
Well, one of the first things that you was always taught was that you have to be twice as good as a white person doing something in order to be as good. So you had to excel at what you did. Like out of our neighborhood there, we got 2 mayors, actually 3 mayors, because now this is the immediate neighborhood that we're talking about. We've had 2 Black mayors here in town. One of the mayors of Seattle was from this neighborhood here. And one of the girls that we went to school with ran for mayor of San Francisco for mayor of Oakland. She was from the neighborhood. So we had doctors and lawyers, psychiatrists come out of the same block.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Do you think that that was partially because of the school? Was it a good school?
well, I think it gets back basically to you have to try harder.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the whole thing. You either did or didn't. And the schools, no. The school actually would have been the same old school there today if it hadn't been burned down.
It was burned
So,
down?
because they built and replaced all the other schools in Denver, but they didn't do anything to Manual, which was northeast, south, and west, the four schools, and then Manual.
Mm-hmm.
Manual was called a trade school up until the 60s. Manual High
Oh, it was a trade school, yeah.
Vocabulary Training School. So they really got it into the system. So a lot of people didn't know that, but that's.
And so, Shiree, would you say that your father taught those same messages to you?
Oh yeah, he would always tell us to come so he can tell us what he went through, and he would sit us down and watch movies. We would fall asleep, and he would get mad.
Trying to do teaching, we were coming home, we used to be involved in Juneteenth. So we would have, out of our business, we would have a booth down there. And I asked them, they asked me, why do we have to be down here working and blah, 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 it's a holiday and blah, blah. And so I said, well, do you know what Juneteenth is and what it's about? And they didn't. So I'll go and invest in the whole series of Roots, $100, $200 for all the series.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't seen it yet. Like she said, that's what they would be doing, sleep. I'd leave out the room. When I come back, right for Chicken George got his foot cut off, they would sleep. They never saw any of it.
Mm-hmm.
But this was an investment that they had to learn about blackness. And that's a good story, good training point if you've never watched Roots. You know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
You really?
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
Very good.
Write it down.
Really good story. Really good story. So one of the I trying to teach them blackness, it was why do we need to know this? Why do we need to know history? So they know as much about it as you do.
I'm sure they know a lot more than
us, but that's part of what we were taught back then was to do better so that you can be equal.
Mm-hmm.
That was the philosophy and theory then.
Frank, how did that impact you as a kid?
Like I say, most of the things up until we were 13, we got to ride bicycles and we could ride out of the neighborhood. Going to places like Curtis Park, where was one of the only swimming pools we could go to in the city, the pool down at Curtis Park, which was one of the borderlines. That was the borderline going west, California. The borderline going east was Williams. They hadn't even got to High yet. When they moved on York, oh man, we was really moving on up then. And then on the north, 38th was the borderline, which is where the train tracks were. That was where the stockyards was. Denver was one of the major hubs in the United States for shipping beef. So you could always smell the stockyards.
Mm-hmm.
And not always, just on days when the wind was favorable. They also had a slaughterhouse down there where Perina Dogchild was.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So
That was a slaughterhouse.
yeah.
Well, it still smells. It still has the smell that people say.
Oh,
It's
no, that's not now it's present for what it was then. Stockyard.
So when you're talking about all of these boundaries or these like borders that you stayed within, what was on the other side of them?
White people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was on the other side. And that was where you could buy.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the areas that you could buy in.
Did you socialize or go outside of the Black neighborhoods for any reason once you got to be a teenager and you had your bicycle?
Yeah, we did. And moreover, a lot of our socialization then was with Hispanics.
Mm.
They went through a name changing thing, from Mexican to Hispanic to this and that, because they didn't like to be called Mexican. So that was a lot of the social changing, social mixing that we was doing. That was over on the north side, which a lot of Italians lived over there. And then the west side is the Hispanics. So we socialized over there. And the rest of it was just, moving into the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
So after we got to a certain point, we was able to start buying anywhere. Well, no, not anywhere, because that's just still coming about. That's still a situation right now today. Being able to buy in certain areas or being able to buy at the right price, because it might cost you $100,000 more. So that was part of, I can remember we would go to Lakeside and we couldn't swim. We could sit up in the balcony up there. They have a seating area and you could sit up there at the swimming pool and watch them. Lakeside Images, they didn't have Water World then. But you couldn't swim, but you could watch them. And downtown, the stores that welcomed you are Black people this is before they got stores in like Three Sisters and, low learners and fewer stores like that. You weren't welcome in the stores then. You couldn't go to any of the movies downtown. But we had our own movies in the neighborhood. So we had 4 movies. And that was in walking distance in the neighborhood from Williams to Curtis Park.
Did you ever hear stories of people trying to go anyway, trying to get in?
Us, me, all of us, yeah. We turned away. But, and there was they didn't give a reason then, they didn't have to. But you were coming out of an era where Stapleton was mayor and he was head of the Ku Klux Klan. So he was one of the Grand Wizards. So people didn't care about telling you no, up until, and it all changed real sudden up in the beginning, right in the front part of the 50s.
And what happened there?
Well, they started having a lot of riots and people was protesting.
Oh.
And they didn't want it here. So the idea was to give us enough of what we needed to keep us from protesting, from were having the problems that they had in Chicago and other places. But there wasn't enough blacks here to protest. All 10 of us could have, you know, not really 10. I think there was 70,000 blacks in Colorado at the time.
Which isn't a lot.
No, that's not
Right.
not the size of anything.
So were there, I guess I didn't know about protests in the 50s. When I think of protests, I hear about like civil rights era, 60s.
Started in the 50s.
And
I had the front part of the 50s.
what sparked that?
Huh?
What sparked it?
There were different organizations, like I was telling you about the Porters and Waiters organization, the railroad. I forget his name, Randolph. I forget his name, but they had a large organization, NAACP, started, which had been active, but started to gain power in the 50s. So it was all over the country because it was just as much. Matter of fact, it was a bigger problem living in the North than it was in the South. White people down there were used to used to being around blacks, but blacks were moving into neighborhoods where they had been white all their lives for years. So they had a bigger problem being around blacks than people in the South did.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they would
Yeah.
If they didn't like you in the South, they would let you know. Up here, you walk away and your back would look raggedy from what they done to you. You didn't know it.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
So a big difference there from being there. And a lot of blacks would say that they'd rather be in the South because at least they knew where they were.
Yeah, I've heard that sentiment before.
Yeah, I was a kid. When we traveled, everybody was working. The war was starting to go on. So when you traveled, there was a book that they had, and it was published all across the nation, and it was called the Green Book. I think that's what it was. But it told you places that you were welcome and places not to hang around in. Places that you could eat at, different, because you couldn't stay everywhere while you were traveling.
Right.
Got a bunch of kids and stuff, you got to know what's safe and what's not safe.
Did you see a green book in the
Yeah, my father kept it in the glove compartment.
In the glove compartment. Wow, so it was really widely circulated.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it was a national magazine. So they kept that in the glove compartment. That when you travel outside the city, you better have one.
Wow.
That's wild.
Did you ever do that with your father? Did you ever travel outside the city?
Sure. He used to go all over. He wouldn't take us to Mississippi. And the closest that way we got to go was Missouri, Joplin, Missouri. He had some relatives there, but he wouldn't let none of us go to Mississippi. And when Emmett Till died, I think that was in because I was about 13, so I guess that'd be like 53. And Emmett Till was he was 13, and he was accused of whistling at a white woman. And they went and got him, drug him out, and killed him, tortured him, threw him in the lake with a cotton gin around his neck. But he floated up anyway. So
you were a 13-year-old boy hearing that story.
Well, my father just said, that's the reason I don't let you go down there because you don't know how to act. And you would be laying next to him. So that stuff.
God, that's scary.
Well, when I was 8, went to Sherman, Texas, where my mother's from. Now, all 4 of her brothers, which were half white, had been hung at different times in their life. But there was a restaurant that was right across the street in the black. I thought it was the black neighborhood. Anyway, I went in and sat down at the desk, at the counter, and they said, "Boy, you must be Horses, boy." No, that was my uncle's kid. He was prominent, I think he was, in the justice system somewhere. But you sure don't know you ain't supposed to eat here. You go down to the window to get your food. So, man, I made a mistake then, and that's what my father was talking about. Because I didn't understand discipline like that. Pay attention to where you are, what you're doing. So it was a good learning experience.
Did you ever feel tired from having to constantly watch your back like that, or did
Well, at that age, you weren't allowed to feel emotions like these kids show today and feel. The freedom that they're allowed is way different than it was then. Even the freedom that she was allowed, she's totally amazed by the interaction between her and her daughters as I was between me and her. And she was raised under the discipline idea.
Well, can you expand on that more? Like, what do you mean, the type of emotions compared to today?
Meaning, like, if these kids feel like they're under a lot of stress and under this, and they got problems and stuff, they show it. We had to pick it up and keep on going. Regardless. Has to do with like parents trying to cook a meal today. You might have 3 kids and everybody wants something different. That was unheard of. Even for her, that was, don't even try it. You eat what we cook, and if you don't, I'm still believe that you should sit down for a meal and family and talk and get some of this emotional stuff off. But these kids today, sitting down as a group is out of the question. Man, 3 kids, and they're gonna sit down at one time and eat. Nah, that's funny. That's funny.
Do you have anything you want to add to that about either how your father raised you or how it compares to now?
Yeah, he fussed at me all the time. I feel I appreciate the discipline that I did get from them. I'm just like more nonchalant about things. I try to be open more. He fusses at me all the time. I know these kids today. I got 2 girls and they're 24 and 19, and they show way more emotions than I was ever allowed. Sometimes I regret it because I feel, they should be a little stronger than what they are. But it's today's world, but I do appreciate what they taught me. I used to be so mad and be so ready to move out because I'm like, it's not fair, and with me being the youngest and the only girl, I felt that they protected me more and I couldn't do nothing, so my train of thought was like, well, when I have kids, it's going to be different. I sure regret it. I don't regret raising them. I just kind of regret some of the things I allowed them to do.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, like I still had to go pick her up from parties, and I'd take her and I'd go in and meet the people that were giving the party for the kids, and then I had picked her up. So, and she was 16 then.
20.
Called
Still
out.
had a curfew at 19, believe it or not.
Oh wow, what was it? What time was it?
12 o'clock.
Mm.
I was just very furious, but I do appreciate it. I do. I respect it now that I see the reason why. But yeah, I really respect it. But back then I didn't. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure.
Frank, do you think that you were more strict with Shiree because she was your youngest daughter? Do you think that's why?
Yeah, she was the only daughter.
Yeah.
Well, youngest daughter, but no, that was part of the way we were raised.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to pass that on. Can't pass anything on to kids today. You have to start a lot earlier. And I think that's one of the things. Well, you can't start disciplining a child like that at 2. If you don't get it in by the time they're 2.5, you're through.
Mm-hmm.
You are through today. So it's a lot different in the age that you start teaching this, start teaching different things. So the way that we was raised, this was the law and this is what it was while you're in this house. And when you get out of this house, you do what you want to do. But you got rules and laws and you don't do this and blah, 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 blah.
And now, when you were having your family, and your kids, had you already started your hair products company?
Yes. That was started actually, I guess, about 40 years ago. I started that after working for 2 major product companies. So have you ever heard of KMS?
No.
We heard about it from you when we first spoke with you, but
Really?
that's the first time we heard about it.
Well, KMS is a professional product line. So if you're a salon person, you know the products that are sold in salons. You can go to those different salons that are in the mall, and you'll see Nexus, Jermac, KMS, JB Products, Paul Mitchell, which was part of Jermac's original people that started out in the product world. And those are salon-directed products. So they're not supposed to be on the shelf. They're controlled, they're professional, so that they, it's such a racket market today that it's really difficult. Everybody's selling something, so.
How did you?
And there's a lot of Trumpism going on. I don't mean to bring in any politics in, but you can sell, what his philosophy was, you can sell the American people anything. And that's the truth. So half of what you buy is what they're selling you. It's not what it really is.
How did you get into that industry? Like, what was the inspiration?
I started in beauty school, and after I had gotten out, I did 2 years in the Navy Reserves. This was right out of college. So after I stayed at home, after I moved back in with my family.
So this is like the 1960s or so?
Not quite to that, almost.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's beginning of the 60s.
Okay.
So when they just said, well, you got to do something. You got to either go to school or get a job. And get out or get out, so it wasn't a choice. You knew you was going to have to leave or go to college. So, which they would, pay and help as much as they could, but you're going to have to figure out how to take care of part of that too. So, my mother was a hairdresser, and she just said, well, why don't you go be a barber or something, and you can use that to pay for your schooling while you're going through college. And I decided to be a hairdresser and fell in love, and I've never worked. I signed my own paycheck for the rest of my life, 60 years.
That's amazing.
Wow. What is it about that work that you really loved? What did you love about it?
Oh, women was the first motivation. It really was. I don't think I made any money doing hair free for the first 2 or 3 months. But, in trade. But the whole thing is just one of those things that it clicked.
Mm-hmm.
That was after I got into it. I got being involved with the people, trying to be able to help or give help as you can help somebody. We had a whole clinic where we were selling and just cut it off, where we were selling products that were vitamins, because that's what Germac was before it switched into beauty products. And they taught the chemistry of hair, the chemistry of the body, so that it was a helpful thing. There was problems that I wasn't able to solve in the beauty industry, different hairs, scalp problems, and so forth. And they did it from a health standpoint. So that's how I ended up with them.
That's interesting. And so what was happening in the Black community in Denver as far as hair around the time you got involved?
Well, that's really funny, but the beauty industry is still one of the most segregated industries there is.
I believe it.
Like, if you go to a barbershop, do y'all go to salons? Are you salon people?
No, I don't really go to salons very much.
Well,
I've had my haircut in so long now.
Yeah, they're loyal to their hairdressers. In other words, if I'm giving a big wedding, my hairdresser has to be there. Mm-hmm. Graduation, my hairdresser has to be there. My hairdresser, so this is...
You must have gone to a lot of weddings and graduations then.
Yep. That's part of it, So
it's a community kind of thing.
Yeah. The more important that a person is, about yourself, the hairdresser has to be there. It's like your doctor has to be there or something or whatever like that on that level. So, you got to have him there or her, whichever, So that was part of the motivation, So when I got into Germac, part of the thing, I didn't go to Germac with the idea of inventing a method to do a curl. That's what it was called at the time, a curl, but it's just a permanent wave. But it couldn't have happened anywhere else than here in Denver, because this was such an integrated society. In other words, we went to, when we go to beauty school, we learn and work on white customers. So they don't have the heat work, the curling irons and stuff at the schools, because they're not prepared to do black hair. So like white hairdressers learn the same thing the blacks do, but 90% of them will tell you they don't know how to do black hair, but they get the same schooling.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Were most of the people at your school Black people, most of the students?
None. I was the only one.
Oh, what was that like to be
The
there?
time I saw a black person was when they came in to do the floors or dump the trash. So it took me 3 years to get out of school because I work in the summer, and then I go back to get me an apartment and pay the rent and save up enough money to get through that year and then work in the summer. But, you know, I wanted it. So, but no, you don't learn on black hair. You don't learn on black people. You don't learn how to give a relaxer. You do it with cream on a mannequin. So isn't that what you learn on?
Yep.
But so you don't know. They learn the same thing you do, but most of them tell you they can't. You can go in a salon today, they can't refuse you as being black, but if they don't, they're not going to tell you that. They're going to tell you, we don't know how to do black hair. You're welcome to sit down and we'll work on you. Because if they refuse you, there's a lawsuit.
Right.
But they don't know how to do black hair.
So you
But
wouldn't want to go
black
there
people-
anyway.
Huh?
You probably wouldn't want to go there anyway then, right?
Well, here's a salon that's in your neighborhood that's very prominent. All your girlfriends are white, and they go to this salon and they keep telling you about this. You want to go too.
Yeah.
But there's nobody there that can do your hair. Or that wants to do your hair because they have to learn. It's like going to school again. So you end up with situations that like when we came out with the curl, it allowed a lot of salons, JC Penney's, the big salons like Regis and all of those, cutting hair and the cutting salons and stuff, they were able to do black people or wanted to do black people because that's where the money was. They charged more for a shampoo. Black salons charge more than white salons. White salons white hairdressers never thought there was money in black hair until then. So it changed the whole economics of hairdressing. Product-wise, they didn't have big companies that were interested in investing in black products. But now, all of them got black products under pseudonames that you would never know.
And around what time did that change take place?
75, 74. I think we hit the market with it in 75.
Okay, so was that also around the time you were having kids?
No, I wasn't having kids. This one I found along the way. No, that was not. No babies till way late.
Oh, okay.
And how did that change affect your career?
I mean, no babies that I was raising. So what was you asking?
When that changed, how did that affect your profession and career?
Well, when you're working, we average 20 hours a day. So you understand, we might have had kids, but the mothers had them. That wasn't about being married. So there was no family involvement at that age, at that time. Now, by the time I did start having where we had kids in the house, like although she's called my stepdaughter, she's my daughter.
Yeah.
So by the time I had her, she was 4 years old. So why don't you tell them what that was like?
It was well, from what I remember, I was born in Denver General, which is now called Denver Health. I still call it Denver General, and people look at me crazy, like, well, "Where's that at?" I I was more like a nonchalant kid, basically. So whatever I was told to do, I'll do it. And then I was more like an outside kid. I had to go outside and play. I didn't want dolls and stuff like that. I was a tomboy. So, I like to play with the boys, wrestle the boys. I didn't want to wear no dresses, stuff like that. So it was interesting. So when I started going to school, I was the youngest out of five, the only girl to a single parent, my mother. She used to walk me and my brothers across the street to Clayton College, which used to be a all white boys school, right before she was able to take us there for daycare. And then she would go to work. And then
You ever heard of Clayton College?
Nope.
That's a big complex that starts on 32nd Avenue and runs down to like 40th or something like that, from Colorado Boulevard to Steele.
Mhm.
This was one of he was one of the Ku Klux Klan too, but he was a general in the war and so forth, and his school, he said he would he would leave the property to the city if they didn't allow blacks to go to that school.
Wow.
So
Jesus.
he had tanks and different guns and everything sitting on the property, as a display from the war. But that was part of his priority to allowing no blacks at the school, and he would leave the property to the city. Big lawsuit, big lawsuit.
And so when you were a girl and you were going over there, around what year was that?
I was baby, so I really don't remember much. I just remember my mom talking about it. She would catch the bus over there. Well, not catch the bus. She would walk over there with us and drop us off, and then catch the bus to go to work. Go to school because she was going to school to be a hairdresser as well. And once she got through school is when she met this fine fella.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yes.
The hairdresser connection.
Yes.
And so
she was raised in the shop.
I was a beauty shop.
She get out of school, and rest of her night was spent in the beauty salon for years. So, raising the kids.
What was the name of the beauty salon?
The Jet Set was one of them. She was at
Phase.
that's when
Phase 2.
we opened up our salon, which was another phase 2.
Phase 2, I like that.
Yeah, well, that was the second phase. That's what it was, another phase. So we had 3 salons, and they were all phases.
So you had another phase 1 and phase 2?
No, it was phase 2.
Another phase and final phase.
Final phase.
Nice.
Okay.
I want to rewind a little bit, and when you talked about like the white hair industry figuring out there was money in the black hair industry, I'm curious how that impacted like your profession at the time.
Kind of boosted up.
Yeah, that was the biggest financial revolution that has ever happened in the hair industry.
Wow.
The white beauty markets, the large companies, Revlon and all these companies started investing in the black products under another name, and they was opening major companies. They had money to come into the market. They had more money than the black companies that had been in there were. The product period of doing hair was changing. And so where they had conditioning products were sold under the idea that if you put enough grease on it, it makes it slick and shiny, that that was a conditioner. So, you know, alleviating dry scalp was by putting grease on it. You know, it would hold the dandruff and stuff in there, and you didn't see it falling, but it was in there, stuck. So they had a whole different theory, whole different way to sell products. And that's what Jam-Mac took control of with the curl. Just revolutionized the whole industry. First year that I was with them, they made $11 million, and we hadn't even come out with the curl that year.
Damn.
That was just from the black market. So the second year when we kicked off the curl, they gave me an educational team, and I had to hire 4 more people. So that made 8 of us that were out there doing shows day and night. We might be in Chicago in the morning, do a show, start at 8 o'clock, and we'd be doing another show at 5 o'clock that evening in Atlanta.
Wow. So
they were usually 4-hour shows because doing the curl was a lengthy process. All it is a permanent wave. Mm-hmm. But they hadn't been able to permanent wave black hair up to that time. So what my job after I got there was to figure out how to permanent wave black hair that you could market. See, and the problem with dealing with beauty products is insurance is one thing. That controls how long you can leave the product on the hair, the liability. So that's a lot involved in what you're doing to the hair. Mm-hmm. You can only leave the product on there so long, you can only do this, and you can only do that. Everything has to be written and tested and tried. So for an insurance company, you know, take a $5 million investment into covering you.
So it seems like a really exciting time that you just happened to be there at the right moment.
It's what it was.
And there's no way you could have predicted that you would have had that boom.
No.
And so you're doing these shows and you're like flying from city to city. And this show, is it on TV or is it like on a big stage or what kind
of they didn't have TVs and stuff. Then they barely were just getting into recording. You know, you had the video camera. Uh-huh. And you didn't have, you weren't able to do TVs and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
You know, most of the stuff that we were doing, we had recordings of it, mm-hmm. of the whole show, but we didn't have it on video.
So you were in front of a live audience?
Yeah, be 600 people. You know, we started having shows, they would be sold out. Like I said, we were sold out a year ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And they were charging like $180 to get in the shows. That gave you enough product to do maybe 3 or 4 heads, so you get your investment back. But you're going to pay $150, $180 to do the show, and be lucky enough to be one of the first hairdressers to learn how to do it. Mm-hmm. So
now, did this impact the entire economy of Denver?
No, the world. Mm-hmm. The entire economy. Well, I mean, you remember when Michael caught his hair on fire?
Who? Michael
Jackson. I know him. Okay, Michael Jackson was on stage, and he went to do one of his little stunts and leap off the stage. And he leaped between these stage lights, right?
Okay.
And he had somebody's product in there, and it lit up and you know, terrible. Yeah, well, they had that of him, but I mean, it just burned his head. His head was on fire.
Oh my God!
But that was the product that he was using to make it curly and shiny. Uh-huh. It wasn't our product, thankfully.
Yeah,
like,
Big Cat was a
Some
good
other
product.
companies had just started coming out
Mm.
with the product, and they didn't test it like they should have, and it was inflammable.
Uh-huh.
But he's not the only one that set their head on fire like that. He was jumping around on stage.
Oh my God.
They would take matches and light it up and say, "Who's this?" And I don't know. That's Michael Jackson and Richard Pryor running down the street.
Oh my God.
So, because they're the matches get burning.
Oh, dude. That's
they're like pouring gasoline in their hair.
It wasn't flammable that way. It's like having flammable oil.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like certain oils will go up.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't on the gasoline side. It's petroleum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Petroleum products that they were using, but that's all the products were petroleum before Jermac.
Mm-hmm. Jermac really changed the scene.
Changed the whole, it was a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Revolutionized the whole beauty industry.
So now, in the meantime, around what year are we in right now? When all of this was going on?
Right.
70s?
From 70 all the way up to 82, 83.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're still doing them. And a lot of these curly looks that they're doing, but they don't call them curls no more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's waves or soft look or natural look,
Mm-hmm.
dry curl or natural curl. It's all the same thing. But so they don't sell it because of Richard Pryor and Michael Jackson. They don't want to be associated with the greasy look.
Mm-hmm.
So
around this time, when all of this is happening, and like, is this also the time when Richard Pryor and Michael Jackson are famous and all this stuff? What was Denver like by then? Had it changed since when you were?
Denver was still segregated as far as the beauty market was concerned. Although, we were the first the first people to have an educational team in the national state registry, education level. So we were the first to be able to go into the national show and give educational classes.
Mm-hmm.
Certified for that. So the market was here. Nobody ever thought of Denver as being prejudiced. But like I tell you, there weren't any. One of the reasons that Black beauty schools have not been prominent is because they're the same as white beauty schools. And you make more money because you got more people to sell it to. If you with the theory. So
yeah.
But the market, a permanent, it's like I was telling you, a permanent wave is a permanent wave. The ability to understand how to do one head should apply all the way through, but it doesn't. So it gets back to the same thing. There's no blacks working in the salon because there's no blacks in that neighborhood. They're in a neighborhood that's far north. That's where this person lives. So they have to drive past 10 salons to get to a salon where they can have enough Black customers to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
So they do white hair.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. When did you transition from Jermac to starting your own? Did you start a salon and your own products, or was it a salon?
I started a salon. I had a salon, a very popular salon before I went to Jermac. Matter of fact, they had invited me to do a show, and that's where Dre Redding was there, and he, invited me to come to apply for the job.
Mm-hmm.
So that salon that I was already in national competition. I did all over the United States. Very expensive ordeal going to state competition. They still have the Hair Olympics and uh, the competitions. These competitions, it costs you like, you take a model, you have to take your own model. So you got to pay for their gowns. So that's $500 to $1,000 right there. Then you got to pay for their food for 3 days, their plane tickets, their hotel rooms. And so if you're taking one or two models, which you usually have to end up taking, if you're getting into the big time taking two, you are getting into an ordeal. So half the hairdressers don't even know about that stuff. They don't want to know about it because that's an expensive endeavor to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't see a lot of hairdressers in competition anymore. They just they make the money, but it's not, to be directed toward getting fame. The more competitions that you win, the more you charge.
Now, what about for you though? Was fame, clout, that kind of stuff, was that appealing to you? Did you like the tension of being a business owner?
Oh yeah. One of the first things that they told me was there's generally only two reasons that you deal with in hair, and that's either fame or fortune. So you can do a lot of different things and be very famous and not have no money. Or you can make a lot of money and nobody knows who you are.
Uh-huh.
So it's one of two things. Like I think she would be the one to tell you. I tried to direct them into the competition in starting out. She did really good starting. She's winning competitions, but what happened there?
I think I got into the game a little too late at the end where everybody started. They wasn't doing as many shows when I came on scene, so I just got in where I fit in, and it just kind of died down about time I got on the scene. So I'm the other one. I like to make the money instead of the fame, but we're still very, very known regardless. Frank, people come to me and I don't even know who they are, but they know me, and they'll say all the things that they done with him and the shop and this, and I just look at him crazy, like, okay. But yeah, he's very known. I think he got best of both worlds, to be honest.
That sounds like
amazing.
Success.
Yeah.
Yeah, the beauty market has changed a lot. It's like you can sell today, but you have to sell through the media. So, the old methods of doing shows, and which is still good because you use the theory of the big fisherman theory. In other words, I'll get you and you go get 5 other people.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a customer and she sells to everybody else, and it makes everything grow.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to work to do that. So, a lot of hairdressers don't want to put in the time anymore.
Did you feel like the thing that your mother told you when you were young about having to work twice as hard, do you feel like that applied to your career as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely, for sure.
Still today.
And
Yeah.
were you usually the only Black person in, like, you were surrounded by white people mostly, and in the hair community, and as a business owner? And
Yes, there was 2 markets, and like for instance, there was a hairdresser, like when I started doing national competitions, which are mostly whites, very few Blacks in the big competitions. And the idea that there's only one or two blacks out of the whole nation that would achieve certain levels. And it was because of the amount of money and spent, and it's back to that fame and fortune thing. And yes, you did have to work twice as hard. They wouldn't believe that, a black kid do right here. And that was beginning to right off there, so you had to start and really deal. Now, one of the things is different having a model, because black hair and white hair are so different.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what you're doing, you can't get the same effects. So you use white models. I never did, but there was one of the guys in the city here, and he's a national known hairstylist, but he is in the competition, but he used white models.
Mm-hmm.
Never used a black model because it's so difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Shiree, when you said still today, when Chelsea asked that question, can you expand upon that?
As in,
when Chelsea was talking about like it being twice as hard for blacks as white, or to work twice as hard for blacks than whites, how do you see that?
I see it in the community as it's hard because a lot of black people can't afford to get their hair done. So basically they want a lot for the little of the money. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of have to sell yourself short just to kind of, I guess, get your clientele up. So with that being said, it's kind of hard working with the black community than it is with the white community. The white community willing to pay whatever it is, they'll give you whatever. Within the black community, you kind of have to have a struggle on some points because, they can't afford it, but they want the look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Shiree, you grew up in the same neighborhood that you grew up in, Frank. Is that right?
Not exactly. About time, yeah.
I lived in the Curtis Park, at the Curtis Park neighborhood of Lafayette.
Mm-hmm.
We're North Denver, so
mm-hmm.
I'm Montbello, so it's a little different. Yeah. So
yeah, that's a whole new thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a whole new community altogether.
So was it, when you moved to Montbello, was it a big shift for you?
Not for me.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think for you?
It was a better choice for me. And we're still here today. So to me, I just felt it was a better choice.
What do you
this is a whole new neighborhood. And Montbello's been called, my ghetto has been called this. It never has been predominantly black. Never has been the predominantly, well, at one time they were 55% of the community. Mm-hmm. And that was only for about 7 or 8 years. But over that, Montbello has never been predominantly black. So, they call it my ghetto and my this and that. That was part of the sales theory that the salesmen were using, because when they built the Pearlmatic house, over half of they built half of Montbello, and they had built a complex just like this out south. So people would come in and they could afford to pay more. So they would tell them, well, you don't want to live there. I can sell you this same house out south for, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but you won't be in my ghetto.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It was part of the market.
Yeah. $10,000 to $28,000 more you pay to get the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, what would you say is the biggest difference between Denver, when you were young and you would step outside your house and you would look around? I imagine what you would see would be very different than what you see now.
well, that, community is part of both ends of the structure there. Uh, Montbello is a community. People here, they live out here, they love it. So it was no different than growing up back then. Only thing is that you couldn't live, you had to live within these certain boundaries back then.
Mhm.
So, the community love is still the same. And like I was saying, knew everybody within the community. So it wasn't a big difference as far as the love for the community is concerned. I remember at one time back then, they had a gang situation. Gangs didn't have guns in. So, and it wasn't about it fight, fist fight, but knives and guns and all of that were not no really big issue for the gangs. They weren't involved in guns at all.
Mm-hmm.
So they used to. There was a movie that came out. I can't remember. Sidney Poitier played in it, but they showed how they made zip guns out of antennas off of people's cars. So nobody that had antennas, all the cars had antennas, for the radio. But they would break the antenna off, cut it off, and make a zip gun out of it. Put a handle off of a cap gun and solder an ice pick tip to it and put rubber bands around it, inner tubes. All the cars had inner tubes, inside the tires.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't know, do you? But they used the rubber to give it the strength to make it fire the bullet. So there's a lot of guns that blew up, and they shoot when a bullet fits inside the antenna perfectly.
Oh wow! So they used real bullets.
Yeah.
They worked like a real gun? Like you could kill someone with it?
Yeah, if it didn't blow up on you, blow your face all up.
Oh my God. Did you know anyone that had that?
Nobody got killed because it didn't have that much power in it, Bullets would be wobbling off and they might get shot. Yeah, they pick the bullet out and keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
But no.
Pull it out and keep on going. Oh my gosh.
Oh. One of our Facebook guests asked, as a lifelong Denver resident, what is something you would want recent transplants moving from out of state to know about the city?
One of the things that I think about is that there's more love in this city than you can get in most major cities.
Mm.
It's not as bad here as some of the cities. I think that's partly because we had never had a large Black population, so we have never been a real problem. Then Colorado Blacks have never represented more than 11%, I don't think. 11% of the whole state population.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about the same here in Denver. And it's been about 11%. So we're not considered a real problem. You only consider the problem when you start getting up to be 50%. And I think the Chicano population now is up around 38% compared to 11% of Blacks. So they're becoming a problem to a lot of people because they're starting to get hold in politics and decision making of their own life. So now you got a problem. So their problem is, is the Chicanos against blacks. Now the white population is easier to separate them, let them deal with each other. But if they do it in unity, they can represent nearly half of the total voting population.
Mm-hmm. And you were saying when you were young, you used to socialize the Black community and the Latino community.
Yeah, where we lived down there, it was almost equal in manual. It was about equal in all the races.
Mm-hmm.
About the same amount all the way. So growing up was just, you had Latino friends just like they lived next doors.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't an issue there.
And Shiree, could you answer that same question from your perspective?
I would say we're more polite here. You can meet more nicer people. We like to get involved with people, like I've been to different states and they said like a lot of states are rude, they come here and they say that we're so nice and stuff. So, I feel we're a nice state,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's anything that when somebody just first moves here, like I'm from California, do you feel like there's certain things that we just don't realize about Colorado, or things that you wish we understood about the history of the place? Or
we're slower than a lot of states, so a lot of people think we're more boring. We get a lot of things later than other states, like movies or songs or whatever, so they consider us a slow state. And so I would let them know, but other than that, they say it's a beautiful state.
mm-hmm.
It's pretty because of the mountains and it's green, but it's dry. So, yeah, it all depends. But
how do you feel about all the people that have moved in over the past? I feel like we've had such a huge boom.
Yeah, I feel we got enough.
Yeah.
I feel we're at our limit. Yeah, I'm done. I think we're at our limit, but
What do you think are some of the stressors that it's causing from your perspective?
The population, I feel that it's making our state dirty, with people that don't care. I think the crime scene has risen more, but we're still not a bad state.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, as we start to wrap up, I'm curious if there's like anything we didn't get to that you guys want to share, or yeah.
No, I think Pops hit it all. He hit every angle.
All right. Well, in that case, sorry. Do you want to add anything, Frank?
Well, I was adding to what she was talking about the idea that we're slow here in Colorado, and compared to other states, we don't have that initial drive. Like in New York, you're going every second. It's like this,
Mm-hmm.
and they come out here and what they call. I met this girl there, and she had a one-bedroom apartment over the bus station, but she lived in Manhattan. And so that was a big deal. I mean, a really big, important deal to be able to live in Manhattan. And they come out here and for what she was paying for that one bedroom, you could get you a 6-bedroom. So she's, it takes them a long time to calm down and live. Personally, myself, once you get used to space, you enjoy space a lot better.
You respect it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's like having quantity and quality, I guess.
Yep.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, I have a few rapid fire questions for you. So we'll just ask you like a quick question. You can answer with like one word or one sentence. Does that sound good?
Okay.
And this is for both of you.
Okay.
So what is one thing that you remember about your childhood house? Just
Cooking.
a little, what's that?
Cooking.
Cooking. Uh-huh.
He's a gourmet cook.
Oh, nice.
Just well, let me say this. From where we live, from City Park, we can hear every night at about when it started getting dark. You can hear the lines. Ooh, ooh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, ooh, ooh. And the peacock. You ever heard peacock?
No.
Mm-hmm.
And to grow up living in a neighborhood like that, you got to understand that it's just absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Beautiful.
What is, next question, what is something that you are really proud of from your life?
Accomplishing the family business.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Being able to leave a family business.
Nice.
That's, being, I was really surprised that because I mean, that she chose, because she had a choice. She could have went to college. She could have done some other things, but she chose to be in the business. So being able to leave her a business or guide her to be able to sign your own paycheck is the way I put it.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes a big difference. She can make as much money as she wants to make. So, I mean, that's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on how hard you want to work and what you want to give up to get it. But signing your own paycheck is different than what you got to imagine. I've done it all my life. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's including the time I worked for Jeremac and KMS, which, two national companies. I basically signed my own job description, wrote my own job description with them, hadn't been written before. So I had something to bargain with.
Yeah. All right. What is a word or maybe a sentence you would say to describe your wife and your mother?
Phenomenal.
Huh?
Phenomenal.
Yeah. It's been just a whirlpool. I mean, and we're still growing. So that's the whole thing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Boredom has not struck us yet. Hopefully it won't find us.
Yeah, it's never boring.
That's good.
Never boring.
You're getting a lot of love from the people on Facebook. They're super grateful for you sharing all your stories. And also somebody found the video of Michael Jackson with his hair on fire.
Amazing.
It's a good moment in history.
Yeah, that was doing that hair.
Yeah.
So it'll tell you the date. If she can get that, find the date on that, you're right in the middle of what was going on.
Wow. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Okay. So are we ready for the last question?
Well, we have another rapid fire question from the audience.
Yeah.
Theater Artibus asks, do you have a favorite comfort meal?
Mine is Mexican food. I could eat Mexican food every day.
I feel
Same.
Yeah, we used to call her fajita. No, that's what we call it. Because she liked it hot and snappy and fiery, and so we ended up eating a lot of, and still to today, we eat a lot of Mexican food.
Mm.
So different styles, different, she's tamed down a little bit from where she used to like to eat. But I still enjoy it.
Yeah, I got this old lady body that tells me I need to calm it down.
Well, as a Chicano person from California, it's just really sweet to hear about this relationship between the Chicano people here and the Black people here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I didn't know about the history.
It's an interesting one of the restaurants that the Black community loves so much had a name. Have you ever heard of La Hacienda?
La Hacienda, yeah.
Yeah.
The one here in Denver?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now they started out in the Black neighborhood across the street from Cole Junior High. Then they grew into, you couldn't eat. They just passed stuff out. It's just like you could turn around in there and get your food and leave.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up moving 2 blocks away over on Downing, where Downing and Curtis meet.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved to the building that they had now. But they had gotten so big here, there's another national company called La Hacienda, and they sued them.
Oh, dang.
Oh, yeah. And it was a big battle. They lost a lot of money in that fight.
Oh,
But they sued them for the name. They had ended up changing the name to the Hacienda or something like that. But La Hacienda is a national chain out of the East.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, yeah, and they came in and sued them. It really broke them up.
Mm-hmm.
But that was one of the treasures in the Black neighborhood there.
That's cool. That's real cool.
Yeah.
Well, so our last question is a question that's going to help us to create this whole performance piece that's going to be produced. And the question is, what is your recipe for community? And so the whole theme of the performance piece is going to be about recipes. And we're going to ask this question to everybody. And so you might say, you want a big helping of this or a small amount of this, little dash of this, little bit of that. What would you say is the most important ingredients for community?
Coming together.
Yeah.
Together.
Being able to not judge by what you've heard or what you think or what might be a situation I don't want to be involved in. So you put in a lot of love and time and patience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of the recipe for making something strong. So unity. And that's what has to be, as long as you're a minority, you got to do that. So it's like a lot of Trump, if he had pulled in, because he got a lot of, and I use the word Mexican, but Spanish American votes. And that's because they didn't want to be involved with what they call the Mexicans coming over. And Mexicans get mad. You call them Mexican because half of the people that speak Spanish are not from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you speak Spanish, in most people's mind, at least most Black people, you're thinking they're from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's not true.
Yeah, that's a common misconception, I would say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's dealing with the time and the patience
mm-hmm.
and learning to understand and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. This was such an insightful evening. I feel like I've learned so much, and people were really into it online. And yeah, I just feel super grateful that you both took the time to just be here with us and talk with us.
Well, I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much.
I'm sure that she can find the time, because she works 24/7.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, no
We'd be glad you can have us back anytime.
Oh, thank you.
That's really nice.
We'll definitely let you know when the performance piece comes out about your stories, probably sometime in 2021, and hopefully we'll get to meet you in person.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right, cool.
Have a
Thanks
good
a lot.
night.
Good night.
You got to go to work.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna here. We stopped the live stream, and now it's just us.
Okay.
All right. Woo!
So were you happy with what you got?
Man, you got a
Oh,
lot of stories,
Yeah,
Frank. That was awesome.
we could have gone for 20 hours, Frank.
Well, I got 20 hours worth of things to tell you. I'll tell you.
Yeah, truly.
Uh,
Thank you so much. That was really, really awesome.
Yeah.
I think as you were talking, I was imagining all of these different things, and I was like, oh, the theater is going to be able to put together something really cool with this. So, yeah, thank you so much.
all right. Next time, I'll be because I got pictures that
Oh, yeah.
go with everything. So
Yeah.
shows everything up and down the line. So
Could you email them to us? Would that be complicated?
I'm trying to get them together now.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
As soon as I get everything together and everything, that would be something we could do.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we could either,
Well, we'll
you could
see.
email them, or we could come by and take pictures of them, or somehow get a copy
Yeah.
made or something.
I just have to get everything together. Now, I've been working on it a while.
Awesome. That'll be great.
Yeah. So I'll be glad to do that.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Frank. You have a good night, and we'll definitely just keep being in touch anyway. So we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds like a winner.
All right.
Okay, you guys have a good one. Stay safe.
You.
You too.
Night.